Once there was a poor man in a country of rolling hills and black forests. He had no money, no home, and no food, but though he was unlucky, he was always in good spirits. "I will find something," he said to himself. "I will travel down this road to the next town, and maybe my luck will change." Hans went on his journey, whistling a little tune. After a while, he heard a voice calling to him from across the road. An old woman, stooping and wrapped in a ragged cloak, gestured to him with a bony finger. "What do you want?" Hans asked, walking up. "What do you want?" the old woman replied, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Hans hesitated, then replied, truthfully, "I want money." "You can have money," the old woman said, producing a bright blue coat from her bag. "Take this magic coat and go to the top of that tall tree. Then go down inside it. You will find yourself in a great underground room filled with 300 shining lights. There are 3 doors. Go through the first door and you will see a big box. Upon this box sits a dog with eyes as large as eggs. Don't be afraid, it won't harm you. Place my blue coat on the ground, take the dog, and place it down on the coat. In front of the box, open the box and you will find money. Take what you need." Through the second door, you will see a large box and a guard dog with eyes as big as oranges. Don't be frightened of it again. Place it on the coat, and inside the box there's gold. Through the third door, you will see the largest box of all. On top of it is a dog with eyes as big as dinner plates. It is harmless. Inside the last box are jewels beyond dreams. Help yourself. "But," went on the old woman, "I request but one favor. In the third room there is a little glass box. My grandmother lost it there years ago. Bring it back to me." Hans gladly complied, and with the magical coat flung upon his shoulders, he climbed the enormous tree. The ascent was long and tedious, but finally he reached a hollow in the trunk and slid into the far depths of the earth. Down, down he went, until he found himself in a great chamber filled with the radiance of 300 suspended lights. 3 doors faced him. He opened the first door and entered a small room. There, on a wooden box, sat a dog with enormous eyes, glimmering like eggs in the faint light. "Good dog," said Hans, and remembering the old woman's words, he placed the blue coat upon the floor, picked up the dog, and carefully laid it upon the coat. Opening the box, he gazed at the sight of coins pouring over the sides. He scooped up handfuls of money and shoveled them into his hat, then placed the dog back carefully on the box and entered the second room. Here, he saw a dog with eyes as big as oranges. "You are a fine dog," Hans whispered, and again he laid down the coat, pushed the dog aside, and lifted the lid. This time, gold glinted up at him. His hands shook as he scooped up handfuls and filled his pockets. Then, with a gasp of air, he entered the last room. The dog in this room was the finest of all, with eyes as big as plates that glowed with a ghostly light. "You are a truly fine dog," Hans said. When he pushed the creature aside and lifted the lid, the sight that met his eyes took his breath away. Inside the box lay mountains of jewels in every color. His eyes glowed with the brilliant reds, blues, yellows, and greens. He filled his shoes with the glinting treasures and was about to climb down when he remembered the old woman's request. On the floor beside the dog, he saw the glass box. It was small and plain, but something about it was strange. He picked it up and held it tightly as he climbed back up the tree. The way down was much harder now that he was loaded with gold and jewels, but Hans struggled to the top. The old woman waited below, her hands clasped in anticipation. "Throw down the box," she screamed when she saw him. Hans hesitated. Something about her voice was different now, sharp and greedy. "Why do you want this box?" he asked. "It is mine," she screamed. "Give it to me." Hans shook his head. "No, I think I will keep it." The old woman's face twisted with rage. In a moment, she picked up a stone and hurled it at Hans. It struck his head, and he stumbled around. "Help! I'm going to fall," he thought, but just in time he grasped a branch and held on. He looked down. "Did you throw that?" "Yes," she snarled. "Now hand over the box." Hans realized now that she was not to be trusted. He stuffed the glass box into his coat, climbed down safely, and left. The old woman shouted curses after him, but she could not do anything. Hans arrived in the town at sunset. With his new fortune, he took the best room in an inn and ordered the best food. The next day he bought fine clothes and strolled around the streets like a rich man. Suddenly he had many friends. But soon Hans heard rumors of a princess who lived in a large house, locked up by her father, the king. "Why is she locked up?" he asked. "A wise man once said to the king that his daughter would marry a poor man," someone explained. "The king was furious and locked her up so that no one would ever see her." Hans was interested. He wanted to see this princess. He tried to go to the house but was turned away. Even when he dressed up in his best clothes and went to the king's palace, he was turned away. "Keep away," the king thundered, "or I'll have your head on a spike." But Hans was not a man to give up. That evening he studied the glass box. What was so enchanted about it? He tapped on it gently, and to his surprise, the dog with eyes as large as eggs showed up. "What do you want?" the dog asked. Hans grinned. "I want to see the princess." In the blink of an eye, the dog vanished, only to return a few minutes later with the sleeping princess on his back. Hans woke her up and took her to his garden. "Look," he said, "you are free." The princess gasped. She had never walked in a garden. The sensation of grass beneath her feet and the sight of stars above filled her with happiness. That evening, Hans and the princess spoke for hours, and a deep love developed between them. But their clandestine meetings were not a secret. The king's evil servant, Anna, suspected something and laid a trap. When the king learned the truth, he was furious. he ordered Hans to be put to death. But Hans, with the power of the glass box, summoned the three great dogs. They chased the king's men away and terrified the king himself. In the end, the king gave in. Seeing his daughter's happiness, he consented to her marriage with Hans. The two were wed in a grand ceremony, and Hans became king. White flowers bloomed in the gardens once more, and they all lived happily ever after.